Last week, the headquarters of Charlie Hebdo, a satirical magazine, was attacked over its portrayal of the Islamic prophet Muhammad and Islamic culture. Gunmen stormed the building armed with Kalashnikovs. A total of 12 people, including the magazine's top editor, prominent cartoonists, and 2 policemen were killed. The men had sand-colored ammunition vests stuffed with spare magazines, army boots, and a black vehicle for escape. Former top French military commander Frédéric Gallois described it as a perfect application of urban guerrilla technique. This was very well executed and well organized. These were not just some gunmen. They were trained to do this. A large-scale manhunt went underway in France for these 2 suspects, and they were believed to be the brothers Sharif and Saeed Kouchi, aged 32 and 34 respectively. The third man, the driver of the black car, was apparently 18-year-old Hamid Mourad. There is some debate among the witnesses. Some say their French was broken and not very good. Others said they spoke French fluently. In either case, witnesses say that they specifically told the media, "Did you tell the media that we are Al-Qaeda in Yemen? We are Al-Qaeda, we are doing this for Al-Qaeda in Yemen." It does seem a little bit strange that they would just say that, but given the fact that it's Al-Qaeda, who really knows? I'm not implying anything by this, I'm just saying that it sounds kind of strange to me.
Good evening. Let's go straight to these dramatic events here in Paris. 3 terrorists who seized hostages at separate locations and triggered a wave of fear right across the French capital have been killed during the course of this Friday afternoon. 2 Al-Qaeda-linked brothers suspected of carrying out Wednesday's raid and killings at the satirical newspaper Charlie Hebdo died in a shootout with the police. Their hostage is reported to have been freed. Then, almost simultaneously, another gunman who took at least 5 hostages at a kosher supermarket in Paris was also killed during a police raid. 3 hostages are reported to have died. Well, let's have a look at the geography of today's main events. Firstly, a car chase. Those 2 brothers I was mentioning just a moment ago entered a printing plant in the industrial area of Dammartin, which lies just to the northeast of Paris. It's about 10 minutes drive from Paris's main airport of Roissy-Charles de Gaulle. Then 40 kilometers away from Dammartin, that other incident at the kosher grocery store, which unfolded there at the Porte de Vincennes, which is on the eastern edge of Paris.
Quickly taking to the media, the French Interior Minister Bernard Cazeneuve made a public statement.
This context is unprecedented. We remain extremely mobilized to guarantee the safety of all French citizens across the country. These recent events show us that huge challenges lie ahead, and they show us what violence the terrorists are ready to use.
Even the president, François Hollande, took to the airwaves to talk about the attack. He applauded the actions and the bravery of the police in bringing the situation to a resolution. He denounced the attacks as terrorism. They also called on people to participate in a solidarity march and asked that this not escalate into further acts of violence. As to be expected, the public immediately came out, and the media, blaming all Muslims in general. The right-wing forces that have been collecting a great deal of power in France for some time have taken this opportunity to blame all Muslims for what has happened. And it's not surprising that this would happen. Already there have been at least 3 attacks on Muslim-owned property. 2 mosques have had, one had a dummy grenade, another one shot through the window, another one a bomb was set off at a kebab store. Bonus points for using the most stereotypical place to attack. But regardless, the public is blaming all Muslims for what the extremist fundamentalist Islamists are actually doing. Now, where was all this when Anders Behring Breivik killed 77 innocent people, most of them children? Did the media blame all Christian people for that? Did the public come out in a complete denunciation of all Christians for what happened? No. But once again, we're seeing that terrible double standard. Of course, these attacks should be condemned. There's absolutely no reason somebody should go into a place like that, especially a cartoonist, and shoot the place up and kill people. It's completely unacceptable. However, in the wake of all this, it should be kept in mind that freedom of speech is not freedom from being criticized. And there's a lot to criticize when it comes to Charlie Hebdo. Freedom of speech is not freedom from the responsibility of that speech that you give out. It's a very racist, homophobic, and sexist publication. We can criticize what they published when this happened. No one is saying that what happened to them is justified. I'm not saying that. Let me be clear. What happened to them is not justified. What happened to them is not justified. What happened to them is not justified. Because no matter how many times I say it, somebody will claim that I was saying that it was. However, we do have a responsibility to call out Charlie Hebdo on its racism, sexism, and homophobia when they do it. And no amount of sympathy for them over this killing should overlook that fact. There's also something else that we should keep in mind. Charlie Hebdo has supported the fascist coup in Ukraine and the bombing of Ukrainian citizens. So keep that in mind if anyone chooses to try to defend them as some kind of progressive force in the media. Yes, Charlie Hebdo is a satire magazine, and it attacks everybody. However, we should keep in mind that they are also intentionally xenophobic, Islamophobic, racist, sexist, and homophobic. And none of that justifies it. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. These pictures are blatantly homophobic, racist, and sexist. One of the things I find absolutely disgusting about this situation is the blatant jumping on the screw political correctness bandwagon. And some people, particularly Fox News and other far-right media outposts, and even some so-called centrists and even leftists, have been calling this an attack. This is what happens when you have political correctness. This in no way, shape, or form is some kind of defense where a mostly white newspaper should be free from criticism, that satirical cartoonists who lay out things can somehow not be criticized. When white people go out and make things like this, insulting, racist comments, yes, they can be called on it. And in no way, shape, or form should the denunciation of the violence used against them be some kind of protection from being criticized for supporting that same power structure that is leading these kinds of jokes against oppressed people. The idea is that white male cartoonists should not have to hear any complaints about their attacking oppressed and marginalized groups. A lot of people are going out and taking to Twitter and changing their avatar to an insulting picture of Islam, calling for Islam to be punished for this. This is a directly racist response. The actions by Islamic extremists do not reflect all Muslims, and this is nothing more than blatant white chauvinistic imperialist colonizer mentality to attack all Muslims for the crimes of extremists. Do we do the same thing when somebody shoots up an abortion clinic? Should we do the same thing when Anders Breivik kills 77 people? Do we blame all white people? Do we blame all Christians for this? And then do we go around with caricatures of white people eating crackers or what have you, and then denouncing all white people for this, or demanding that all white people come out and denounce this crime as something they don't support? No. But that is what happens when it's someone who's not white. So none of this, like changing your profile picture to something that insults Islam or something that insults the Prophet Muhammad, is something that's even an appropriate response, because that is a direct attack against all Muslims, not the extremists who are responsible for this crime. One of the really big problems here is the rallying cry to defend Charlie Hebdo. It's a rallying of white cartoonists, white male cartoonists, to get together and celebrate the bashing, the ridicule, the insulting of oppressed and marginalized groups. That is the narrative that we are being given by the media and by imperialism itself. And have no illusions, France is an imperialist power, a long-standing imperialist power. This has been acting as a kind of rallying call for everyone to get together and begin attacking Muslims, to begin attacking marginalized groups, because it's like the clarion call for patriotism. Someone has been identified as an enemy, wrongly or rightly, and the trumpet of nationalism is played, and we're supposed to attack these people without any regard. The same thing happened after 9/11. We are supposed to attack these oppressed and marginalized people of the world, simply under the banner of they did something to us, when they really didn't. One particular extremist group actually did. And the narrative that's being played out in the media is that it's us good white Westerners against those evil Islamic scum who don't like our freedoms, who don't like our freedom of speech, when in fact it is far more complicated than that. There are tons of oppressed and marginalized people that support freedom of speech. And these extremists do not talk for those people. And we should not act as those extremists speak for them. But that's exactly what we're getting in the media. We're getting a rallying call to attack what is essentially, in this case, the Islamic third world. Freedom of speech is not freedom from responsibility for that speech. To claim that these guys, Charlie Hebdo, are martyrs for free speech is wrong. They are victims of a killing, an unnecessary killing that should not have happened, yes. But that does not make them free from criticism for the racism, sexism, and homophobia they put out. These guys should not be made out into, a kind of martyrs for free speech. There are plenty of people who are far more deserving of that. People like Chelsea Manning, people like Julian Assange, people who have gone to prison to release information that bring us the truth, not some satirical, racist laugh fest. Mark Klein, the one who reported, let the media know that AT&T was spying on people. That guy's name has gone completely unnoticed. These are martyrs of free speech, people who have suffered as a result of standing up for what is right and getting information that was being suppressed. To call these satirical, racist cartoonists martyrs is disgusting. They were nothing more than petty, hate-filled people, and no amount of their suffering makes them immune to the criticism of the garbage that they put out. Now, let's imagine some brown people, some Muslims moved into some kind of white country like France, and they started making magazines that attacked white people, gave some of the worst stereotypes of white people possible, and said all kinds of horrible, nasty things, and even attacked Christians. How fast do you think that would be denounced? How fast do you think somebody would be clamoring for someone to do something against it? It would be. Just think about this the other way around when situations like this happen. I find entirely hypocritical this entire claim of freedom of speech under attack. Where were these same people, this same public outrage, when 17 journalists were killed by Israeli forces last year? They were nowhere. What about in 2003, when an air-to-surface missile launched by the United States military killed 15 journalists in an Al Jazeera office in Iraq? Where's the outrage? Where's that concern for the freedom of the press? Was that an attack on freedom of speech? But we heard nothing. These incidents have been completely forgotten, along with many others. No one says anything of the July 2007 murder of two Reuters journalists working in Baghdad, Namir Nur el-Din and Saeed Kalmah. Both these men were deliberately targeted by U.S. Apache gunships when they were on assignment in East Baghdad. This was released by WikiLeaks, and those people were subsequently suppressed and called the enemy. What about Mozambique, the freed Guantanamo detainee and human rights campaigner who was falsely accused of terrorism and imprisoned for months after flying back from Syria with damning evidence of Britain's complicity in the torture of the Muslim world? Or what even the Al Jazeera journalist Abdullah Haider Sheh, incarcerated in Yemen at the behest of America, working for spreading the wrong type of facts? What about all those who have sacrificed for freedom of speech? Like I said, Julian Assange, Chelsea Manning, Mark Klein, people who have stood up for the freedom to be able to say, the freedom to criticize power, the freedom to criticize society. People who have thrown away their entire lives. Edward Snowden, who basically threw away his entire life just to be able, so that we could know what was going on with the NSA. Where are the denunciations of the attacks upon these people? These people have attacked the most powerful in the world, who have the ability to suppress our freedoms, our freedom of speech, spy on our phone conversations, track us on the internet. But it seems that all this global sympathy is aimed for a bloody satirical newspaper that was literally very little more than a racist, homophobic, sexist outpost. The attack on free speech is always being given to us in this very narrow narrative. It's okay to attack the poor, the marginalized, the oppressed. And if anybody even questions them in this situation, if anybody even criticizes them for their homophobia, racism, and sexism, oh, you're a bad guy, and you're therefore trying to defend the attack against them. But look at these other people who have done it for the world. Support one of them, and you're the terrorist. You're the bad guy. I mean, come on. Where's the crying of freedom of speech and defense of those people? That can't be found. So before anybody flies off the handle looking to attack the Islamic world for this, take a look at who the real champions of freedom of speech are, and how they have been treated in comparison to just some racist rag in France. If you like this video and you'd like to see more of them, then head over to my Patreon page and show your support. Or you can go to the MRN bookstore and check out some of the latest books available. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and share on various social media.